which is called Sands. And they didn't have any sort of memorial place or garden or feature where people who were in my place could do something, because I thought I'd plant a tree in their place. But they didn't have one. So I decided to change that, and I decided I would give them a garden so that anybody in my position could plant a tree there, or could go there and see it and sit and feel something when they got there. They were creating something called the National Memorial Arboretum. And the National Memorial Arboretum was supposed to be an arboretum to celebrate or commemorate the lives of people that had passed on. And they were focused mostly on the military. But the man who ran it was a friend of mine, and I said, could I have a garden, a plot? But because he was a friend of mine, he agreed, and so Sands were delighted. They had an empty plot in the National Memorial Arboretum. I needed a seat, and being connected to Portland, my family comes from Portland in Dorset, I decided that we needed to have a seat, which was in the shape of the Sands logo, an eye with a baby in it. And there needed to be a giant slab of Portland limestone that I could carve and put into this seat. Unfortunately, the cost of creating that seat was about £20,000, and we didn't have £20,000 to create the seat. But by weird coincidence, there was a charity on Portland who'd had a grant to create a public sculpture, and that public sculpture was designated to be put on the beach in Weymouth. So I went to see them to see if I could persuade them to use the grant to give me the bench for the garden. And they didn't think they could, but they thought it was at the discretion of the chairman. And the chairman of the trust was somebody I'd not known or met. But by the weirdest of coincidences, the year before, I'd saved somebody's life on the beach. They'd fallen over and crashed onto the rocks and broken their ribs. And I managed to do CPR and get their heart started and get them into an ambulance. And they'd lived. But I hadn't seen them again until I walked into their house as the chairman of the trust, and it was the same man whose life I'd saved on the beach. And when I asked for the bench, he said, well, you saved my life, it's the least I could do. And he gave us the bench, which is now the centrepiece of the garden.